whether you're in a political office or you're just a community member. We're here to serve you guys. And I am honored to be back in my hometown and really to be able to share the stage with Chief Skiro. As we think about, the state of the border and what's happening, what I expect to do today is share both the national level issues that are occurring, and then we'll also get down to these local or regional level issues. And then what I want to do is allow an opportunity for each of y'all to ask questions if you would like. And then afterwards, I'll get with our media outlets and share some information with them. But I will tell you that I'm going to be as transparent as I possibly can be. If I don't know the answer, I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it or tell you something differently. I'm going to tell you from where I sit in Washington, D.C., what we're working on, what we're doing to try and improve the situation in our border communities. But first, I'd like to share some information. And some of y'all already know this because social media is a wonderful tool most of the time, not all the time, most of the time. About an hour and a half ago, I was named the Chief of the United States Border Patrol. So for me, that is truly an honor, right? 25th person to run an organization as large as we are, and really to be from Del Rio. I mean, I never thought in a million years that I would have this opportunity to serve and lead such a fine organization. I knew that I was always going to work hard and try and do everything I could to improve and be a good representative of West Texas. But I will tell you that being named the Chief of the Border Patrol, I feel obligated, humbled, and honored, not just to represent the agents, but to represent each of you, because I grew up, right down the road here in Alta Vista. Yesterday, I told this story earlier, I got a call and somebody said, hey, I hear you're the acting chief of the Border Patrol. How does it feel? And I said, well, it's 100 degrees and I'm cutting my mother's lawn with a push mower. Pretty humbling. And I say that to let you know that my roots are deep and I am humbled. But also think that I'm also got tremendous experience. I've been doing this in May. It was my 30th year wearing this uniform. And then I wore our military uniform in the U.S. Army for several years. And so I think that I am in a unique position to lead the Border Patrol. One, I've worked all over the southwest border. I've worked overseas in Afghanistan twice. I've worked in Washington, D.C. This is my third stint in Washington, D.C. So I know war zones, right? And so I am going to do everything I can to advocate for all of you. What I'd like to do is share some information first. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Skiro. He's going to talk a little bit about what's happening here within Del Rio. And I will tell you, when I left here back in, 16 months ago, this wasn't the second busiest place in the country. It is now. And Chief Skiro and the men and women of Del Rio are doing it with 1,500 agents. He should have about 2,500 agents. And I'm going to do everything I can to push more personnel down into South Texas and into Del Rio, because I think it's important. This isn't, we're not going to fix it with just infrastructure. We're not going to fix it with just technology. We're certainly going to have a combination of those two things, but the most important recipe for success is making sure we have the right people wearing this uniform out there supporting not just our communities, but our fellow law enforcement partners that have joined in this fight to ensure that our communities are much safer than they are right now. Can you go to the first slide, please? So I think it's important for people to recognize that we've seen surges throughout my 30-year career. I've been assigned to South Texas. I've been assigned to California, Arizona, even here, back in 2005 and 2006, we were busy. And we did some things to adjust to that traffic. We started prosecuting people. Operation Streamline was very, very popular for us here in this community. We also did that in Yuma, Arizona. So we have been able to make adjustments to our operational posture to bring that those traffic patterns down. So if you look at the numbers here, 172,000 apprehensions. So far, the Border Patrol has had to deal with 1.4 million entries into this country. That's a little over 1 million apprehensions. That's about 250,000 people that have gotten away from us. We don't catch everybody. We don't have enough agents. I wish we did, but we don't. And certainly we have managed to push some people back. So that's what that 1.4 million represents. So think about that in the context of you have about 16,000 Border Patrol agents working 24/7, managing 2,000 miles of the southwest border, trying to keep these communities safe. They're pretty busy. So when I first started 30 years ago, the job was pretty easy. We went out there, we apprehended folks from Mexico. I processed them on the hood of my 4x4, and I drove them right back to the border and sent them back south, and it was a cycle, an endless cycle, okay? That doesn't exist anymore. The demographics and the population we are seeing each and every day is much more complex. And how we manage that population is much more complex. So when you look at the breakout, as I said, back in the day it was predominantly Mexican citizens. Now we have people from Central America, right? Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Well, what makes this community, and excuse me, Chief, if I share information that's Del Rio centric, but what makes this area so much more complex is now you're getting people from Venezuela, Haiti, Africa, Cuba, Ecuador, on and on and on. So it would be easy if they were all single adults, you know, 25, 30-year-old. We'd process them, put them on a plane, send them back south. But they're not. They're kids under 18 years old. They're family units, a women with 2 or 3 kids. And then you have that single adult population. So every single one of them requires a different coordination responsibility. And it's not just the Border Patrol. I have to rely on other agencies to do this. I have to rely on ICE. I have to rely on Health and Human Services. I have to rely on non-governmental organizations. And then I have to lean heavily on communities. And the partnerships we have embedded with the county and the local officials, man, it is just amazing. Without them, we would fail miserably. And so I know quite a few people say, well, what about that other population that's out there? Those population that we call special interest aliens. You know, somebody from Yemen, somebody from Somalia, somebody from Turkey. Did we apprehend those? Oh yeah, each and every day. 148 different countries Border Patrol agents have apprehended individuals from. That's a lot of countries. Every single one of them has to travel through another country to get here. They have to go through Panama, Colombia, Mexico. Guess what? Guess where I have Border Patrol agents at? Colombia, Panama, Mexico. So this idea that if somebody comes from Yemen and they show up on our doorstep and we apprehend them, that's the first encounter with them? No. We know they're coming. We track and monitor because they fly in, right? They're not walking. They fly into an airport. And I have agents that are out there each and every day, actually with our customs officers. We have a security program that we run internationally, and so we're monitoring their traffic movements. So I'm not trying to tell you that there's a risk out there. There's not a risk out there, because there is. But I'm also telling you that we're doing everything we can to address those issues. Those are just some of the countries that we've apprehended folks from. And yes, these last 2 months have just been busy. I mean, the numbers are through the roof. What are we doing against this? Go on to the next. So, a lot of people think Border Patrol are immigration police. No. My job is to secure the border, okay, against everything. If it's narcotics coming across, I'm going to do everything I can to catch it. If it's guns going back into Mexico, I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. If it's money going back south to the cartels, I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. If it's other illicit cargo coming across in between the ports of entry, that's my responsibility. And then I've got tremendous partnerships at our port of entries. So we've got to work closely to make sure that we don't abandon them or they don't abandon us. So we're constantly communicating. You look at the immigration stats. What's different? Back in the day, you'd catch 2 or 3, maybe 10 by yourself. Now I've got Border Patrol agents catching 150, 200 with just themselves and another agent or 2. Can you imagine managing that out there? And you've got, even though most of them are family units and kids, but you've got adult males with kids. You don't know who they are, and you've got to manage these groups. And why are they doing this? Because the cartels are dictating it, right? They're telling these groups, I want you to cross here, and I want you to stay in a group, find a Border Patrol agent as soon as you possibly can, and then when that happens, we're going to slide some narcotics through over here, or maybe these aliens that are criminal aliens, we're going to try and get them through over here. What we can't do is lose sight of the fact that they're trying to do this, right? They're trying to take advantage of this task saturation that's happening at the border. And I can tell you the Border Patrol agents are pretty disciplined, and they're starting to catch on really good to what's happening out there. Fraudulent family units, it happened 30 years ago, it's still happening now. We have done a really good job of running biometrics. We do some DNA testing. I don't have the capacity to DNA test everybody, otherwise my stations would be filled to capacity, and they're already pretty full now. But we are doing everything we can when we identify those types of false claims. Narcotics. One of the big things that local law enforcement deal with are sort of what's happening in our communities, right? The narcotics, the fentanyl, the methamphetamines, and this is all over the place. It used to be the big cities. Sheriff Coe, where you at? Do you have a drug problem in Kitty County? Yeah, Uvalde has it, San Antonio. Every community has a bit of a narcotic problem. And why? Because this call coming through the southwest border. So I've got to address those issues. And so people say, well, you know, the border's out of control. We're busy, but we are still up in every category of narcotic seizures except for marijuana. And the only reason we're not up there is because it's legal just about in every state. And so when you look at the fentanyl, the methamphetamines, the heroin, the cocaine, we have seen significant increases in seizures. That means our agents are doing a pretty good job against that counter-narcotics threat. And then the criminal aliens. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't read a paper or a report from one of my agents that talks about a criminal alien, sexual offender that they haven't apprehended out there. Those folks aren't getting released in these communities. Guess what happens to them? They go to jail. When they get out of jail, they go back to their country of origin. They don't get released into the community. We are making sure that that is a priority for us. And you can look at the statistics there, and we'll leave these up afterwards so if people want to take a picture or look at some of the information. But these are national level stats. Next slide, please. I'm a numbers guy. You wouldn't think from Del Rio that I'd be a numbers guy, but I am. I always focus on metrics and stats. And so that gauges for me whether my agents are doing a good job or not, or where I need to focus my energy on. So you look at tractor trailers and stash houses. Look at the increase in cases and the increase in encounters. To me, I didn't get more agents to do this work. I've got less agents. When I was in DC 10 years ago, I had 21,370 agents. I have 19,555 now. You talk about defunding the police, they defunded the Border Patrol over the last 10 years. And so we are having a significant impact on this illegal traffic that's coming in between the ports of entry. You look at the deaths and the rescues. I don't want anybody to die out there, okay? But the smugglers have little regard for this migrant population that comes out in between the ports of entry. They'll leave them out in the middle of nowhere. They'll leave them in the back of a tractor trailer. They'll let them drown in the river. They'll tell them to cross in a location, and they say it's shallow. When they get in the middle of the river, it's over their head, and they don't know how to swim. That's what our agents are having to respond to each and every day, and they're doing a phenomenal job. Just look at those stats. Look how many rescues we've had, almost 7,000 rescues. That's a lot of people that are getting saved out there that ordinarily probably would have perished. You look at what's happening. My agents are getting assaulted each and every day. 230 assaults already. I've got to make sure that they go home to their families safe. And so what am I doing to help protect them? I'm making sure they have the best equipment. We give them the best policies. And we don't put them in a vulnerable position. And that's where those groups of 100 come into play. We got to make sure that we're addressing those large groups in a manner that makes it advantageous to the Border Patrol or law enforcement in general. Then you look at the seizures of the narcotics. As I said, we're up just about in every category, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to identify those cartels that are taking advantage of this situation, because they're making not millions, billions of dollars off the illicit trade that's happening, both the migrant population and then, of course, the narcotics. Next slide. So people ask me, well, what are you doing as the deputy chief and now the chief of the Border Patrol? What are you going to do to make a difference? One, I'm going to invest in people. I'm going to make sure I have the best leadership team in the country. I'm going to make sure that I give our Border Patrol agents, and I've got 4 of them over here, I'm going to make sure they have the best equipment, the best training, and the best support. I'm also going to make sure they have the best technology. Somebody asked me at the sheriff's, hey, do walls and work? I'm going to tell you, infrastructure works. But if I can't get down to the river, if I can't get down to the border on a good road, what good is it to have something to slow somebody down or a technology to identify them if my agents can't access the border environment? So I've got to work with property owners and communities to make sure that we have lateral access down there so our agents can patrol on the border and not 100 miles away from the border, because that's what's happening in some locations. And we're doing everything we can to remedy that. Then I've got to work with my partners. In the Border Patrol, we have a strategy. First part of that strategy is to secure the border. That's what y'all are here to hear about, right? How are you going to secure the border? And I talked a little bit about that. The second part of that strategy is organizational excellence. And the third part is stakeholder engagement. This is stakeholder engagement. And my partnerships with the other law enforcement agencies, that's stakeholder engagement. Securing the border is making sure I have the right combination of technology and agents and resources and infrastructure. Organizational excellence, man, that's a big one. Because I always tell people, if I can be good as an organization, all this other stuff will come into line and will give me, I think, a good enough strategy to address all these issues we're going to talk about today. I've been the chief of the Border Patrol for about 2 hours. But I think my whole life, I've prepared for this moment, to take the baton from Chief Scott, who, man, what a patriot. That guy left everything on the field. He really did. I had a tremendous partnership. He asked me 1.5 years ago to be his deputy. And when he asked me, I said, I'll do it under 3 conditions. One, I want to be heard. I don't want to be a yes man. 2, you're going to take care of me. And 3, I don't want to be the chief of the Border Patrol. And I said that. I didn't want to be the chief. I was okay being the deputy chief because I could stay behind the scenes and influence what's happening, really, I thought, from a different perspective. But now that I sit in this role as the newly anointed Chief of the Border Patrol, I couldn't be more proud of the fact that I'm going to be able to influence policies and decisions at the national level that represent each and every one of y'all, okay? And I will guarantee you in this new role, I'm not going to shy away. Somebody asked me if I was a so-and-so supporter. You know who I support? I support America. I support the flag, you know? No one, I think, that's not true. There's a lot of us, a lot of patriots in here. But my family has raised their hand probably more than most an allegiance to this country. It ain't gonna stop now. And so I promise you, as I sit here as the newly appointed Chief of the Border Patrol, I'm gonna bust my butt. I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that your equities are considered in every decision that's made in Washington, D.C. And then we're gonna turn that into practice. I'm gonna make sure Chief Skuro and the rest of the men and women that wear this uniform have a plan, right? Because that's the big thing. What's our plan? What are we gonna do about this migration issue that's happening, okay? I'm not a policymaker, but I can certainly influence it. And so when COVID hit, guess what? I had a plan. I wasn't caught flat-footed. When civil unrest hit, I had a plan. Nobody plans better than the Border Patrol other than the military. This, I've got a plan. And my team, I've got some brilliant people in Washington, D.C. that are working on this plan right now. Okay? And it includes sending some people back south. It includes speeding up the processing so we're not bogged down in these communities. It includes better relationship and coordination with these other agencies. It can't just be a Border Patrol issue, or it can't just be a Del Rio issue. San Antonio has a stake in this. Houston, Dallas, Nebraska, Iowa. Every community is a border community. Okay? I told the sheriffs the other day, this isn't just a RGV South Texas problem or an El Paso problem. This is a problem for the whole country. And if we don't look at it that way, we're going to certainly lose perspective. I don't want to take up all the time, so I'm going to let Chief Skuro talk a little bit about what's happening here in Del Rio, and then we're going to get right to the question and answer period. Chief?
Good morning, everyone. So you heard the chief talk a little bit about what's going on nationally, and I don't think I have to tell anyone in this room what's going on locally. We're living it every day. We have been for quite a while, but I am going to go through the numbers just a little bit so that you know kind of where we're at today. So far this year, this fiscal year to date, we've caught 141,000 people just in the Del Rio sector. And so the Del Rio sector, if you take a look at that map over there, you can see us centrally located here in Texas. So we're right in between Big Bend and Laredo. We're 47 counties, about 245 miles of border. And as the chief told you, we've got around 1,500 agents to try and manage that 245 or so miles of border. And we're doing the very best that we can with what we have. The chief is committed to getting us some additional help. We actually have received some TDY help into the sector, some temporary duty assignments. We've got folks from our northern border, from our coastal borders. We've got folks coming from as far away as Miami to help us manage this flow of people that are coming into the Del Rio sector. What we're doing with those people is we're putting as many of them as we can into our processing centers, because as we've talked about before, that's where we're getting bogged down. We've got these big groups coming at us in a couple of spots, primarily here in Del Rio proper. We're getting a group of 156 in the morning, maybe another group of 70 or so a little bit later, and all of that causes more agents to have to be pulled in to process. And so these folks that are coming from the northern border and the coastal borders are taking on that role, so more of our agents that know the area can get back out into the border areas that they know well and deal with folks who would otherwise get away. So we've seen a tremendous increase. We've never seen anything like this in the Del Rio sector, and I know all of you know this. I spent some time out on the river here a few weeks ago with the media and talked to some of the landowners out there down on Vega Verde Road. And so they told me, we bought this property down here so that we could come and enjoy the river. And there have been people crossing this river since the river started flowing. But it's never been like this. So they expected, 4 or 5 folks across once in a while. They would see that, they would call the Border Patrol, and we would come. But 156 people at a time crossing the river, landing on your back porch, and waiting for the Border Patrol to come and get them is just more than they've ever dreamed possible. But we're doing everything that we can to deal with it. The number of single adults that we're arresting is up so far this year over 600%, or right around 600%. The number of family units that we're seeing, around 450% increase. The number of unaccompanied children, about a 300% increase. Now, on the unaccompanied children, we have done a really, really good job of getting those folks out of Border Patrol custody. So you'll remember back in the news when you read about us having, 2,000 kids in Border Patrol holding cells. That's not the case anymore. HHS has stepped up their game. They have built facilities, they're staffing facilities, so that these kids can move out of Border Patrol custody. That does not mean that they're not still being dealt with by the government. That's a problem that continues and needs to be addressed. But they're not in Border Patrol holding facilities, which are not designed for kids. They're just not. They're designed to deal with single adults for a very short time before we can move them back to their country or put them in jail if they're criminals. So we're doing a lot better in that regard. We're moving more of these folks out of our custody faster. So I know locally here in Del Rio, there was some concerns. We were releasing a lot of folks to our NGOs. Y'all would see us take a bus to the NGO. We would drop people off there. Our non-governmental partners, they would assist, provide humanitarian aid, and help these folks move into whatever part of the country they were getting to. So number one, Border Patrol agents have a very specific function. We're an interdictive agency. We go to the border, we patrol the border, and we identify threats. As the chief indicated, that might be people, it might be guns, it might be money going south. We identify these threats and we interdict them. That means we catch them. We bring them in and we process them within the confines of the law. That is our job. It's been our job since 1924. That is how we secure the border. We deal with threats, we process those threats within the confines of the law. What happens after that is not a Border Patrol decision. We're processing these folks. Some of them, if they're criminals, are going to jail. Some of them, if they meet detention requirements, are being handed off to ICE, enforcement removal operations, and they're being detained. The ones that don't, right now, some of them are being released. Here in Del Rio, it was mostly family units. So these were families that came through. They were not amenable to detention. They had no criminal record, so they were being released, basically on a PR bond. We released them to the NGOs. The NGOs were providing them with humanitarian aid, and they were moving out of here on Greyhound buses. The vast majority of them buying their own tickets. They had money in their pocket, they bought their own ticket, and they moved out. So I tell you that so that you know all of these folks that were coming here, most of them were family units and most of them were moving out. These are the folks that you were seeing in downtown Del Rio. And you're not seeing that as much anymore because more of the folks are being moved out through Eagle Pass. More of the folks are being moved out by ERO. So you're not seeing as many releases here in Del Rio. You will still see some. Most of the folks that we're releasing here in Del Rio right now are family units who have injuries that don't allow us to move them into another area for processing. They're elderly, some pregnant females, some of those folks. We just can't detain them under the current guidelines. So we're processing them for release here. But that's the status right now here in the Del Rio area. The number of criminal aliens that we're finding that are trying to get away from us, that's the real story. Again, our agents are bogged down. They're dealing with all of these numbers and these processing issues. So what happens, again, the cartels are very, very smart. They've got a good business model. They know to push these big groups through. They know we're going to be bogged down, and then while we're doing that, they're trying to move around us on our flanks. We've seen about a 1,400% increase in the number of sex offenders that we're catching that are trying to get away from us. These are the folks that are in these smuggling loads. Tremendous increase in the number of over-the-road smuggling cases being arrested in Kenny County by us, the Sheriff's Department, by Texas Highway Patrol, Uvalde County, Maverick, Val Verde. We're seeing this increase everywhere. These are the folks that don't want to be caught. That's why it's important that we have this support coming from the coastal border and from the northern border to help us with processing so our agents can be back out trying to stop that. We've seen a tremendous increase in the amount of support that we're getting from our state and local partners too. Has anybody seen a black and white in town? So there were 200 additional highway patrolmen sent to help us here in the Del Rio sector. That was a month and a half ago. That number got bumped up to about 400 as of last week. And so, again, the idea is because the Border Patrol is inundated with processing, because we're seeing these groups come across, the state has sent us some additional law enforcement help to help us cover the flanks until we get our plan in place to deal with this other issue. As the chief said, we've gone through this before. We've seen these increases, these surges for the last 30 or 40 years. It's never been this bad. I'll tell you that straight up. I've never seen it this bad. We're seeing more people coming now with a varying demographic that makes it a lot harder to deal with than it was in the previous surges. But the chief has a plan to address it, and I know that we're going to be successful in managing this problem. But I'll tell you right now, we could not do it without our state and local partners, our sheriff's departments, our police departments, our county judges and our mayors, Texas Highway Patrol, Texas Parks and Wildlife. All of them have brought everything that they have to our area to try and help us manage this issue, because no cop wants to let a bad guy get away. It's contrary to our nature. We don't want criminals to get away. We've got a lot of them trying on our flanks. We really do. We've got a lot of folks trying to get away from us. We're working really, really hard to get as many agents back out on the line to deal with that, and we brought all of our partners to the fight to help us until we can get more of our agents back out onto the line. That's the status here in the Del Rio sector. I really don't want to talk a lot. Most of you know everything that's going on here. I've spent a lot of time out in the community talking to folks. I really want to get to the question and answer portion of this because we've got the new chief of the Border Patrol here, and I know we're going to have a lot of questions for him. Thank y'all.
At this time, if you have a question, I ask that you raise your hand. I do ask that media hold all questions until our media portion to allow the community to ask their questions. When you raise your hand, I will come to you if you choose to say your name. And then if you have a specific question to either Chief Ortiz or Chief Scarrow, if you can please address that as well. First question.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Del Rio boy, very
Yeah.
proud of you.
Thank you.
And my question to you is more of a suggestion. I am retired CBP DHS, and I was law enforcement, so I've had background investigations and everything. And I was wondering if you would consider having people who are retired, as many retired people here who were retired from Border Patrol or Customs, who could help you in some way, volunteer basis, would cost you nothing, just on the basis of being patriots. Consider it, please.
You gonna sign up too? You're gonna sign up too? You know what? Great question. And we have actually entertained, this rehired annuitant process. I will tell you that we've got some tremendous volunteers right now. And what we've asked is DHS to go to these other agencies, folks that have no tie to border security. They could be working in cybersecurity or some other FEMA. And we've asked them, hey, go down to the border, volunteer. We'll pay you, but go down there and volunteer. And so they have. They're working in our stations and our sectors. And guess what? They think one thing, right? Because you see one thing on the news, and this is your perception of what border communities are like, and this is what's happening. They come down here, they experience it firsthand, they're like, whoa, Border Patrol agents are pretty nice. Guess what? We're fathers, some of us are grandfathers, and we feel empathy for the folks that we're dealing with each and every day. So we do have some volunteers helping us. We're not quite there yet to get folks that are truly retired. I think y'all should really just be enjoying the fruits of all your labors, and I think we're going to be in a good position. I think we're at I say every issue has a tipping point. We're not quite there, but we're getting close.
Next question.
Thank you, Chief. I want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you. The one thing that I was disappointed with this morning was that we did not honor God, and we did not honor our nation before we started.
Yeah,
And that's our problem, because we tend to forget, and we take our freedoms for granted. And these people, they're not just coming across because they need help from us. They're coming across because they're invading us. They all have a purpose. The NGOs and the cartels, everyone's making money off of them. But why is it that children who don't really understand our laws, don't even know what they're doing here, why is it that they have attorneys assigned to them? We keep seeing this at the NGO centers. We're getting children that are coming across that are from the cartels, and they're being implanted here in our country. Terrorists that are coming from the different Muslim countries, we don't hear about them being arrested. We don't hear about the Chinese. I keep looking at your communication pages and I don't see anything. I don't understand. Where are the Koreans? Where are the Chinese? Where are the Pakistanis? Where are all the Muslims? I mean, last year we heard about some that had changed their clothes and were posing as workers along the bridge from Iran. There were like 3. There was one Russian that was under arrest here at our GO Center, but that's only 4. Where are the others? The Chinese have built their big, long
wind farm
airstrip.
Yep.
For what purpose? They can land 2 C-130s on that airstrip. Where are they? We know they're coming. We know they're coming through Del Rio because I see them. I see them being picked up. There's nothing that we can do to bring awareness to that. I don't understand. Are we just not mentioning the numbers from their countries because we're afraid of, repercussions or what? But I know they're here. And they come in and they have the money and they start their businesses and they get a green card right away. I mean, we were at the hospital the other day and some Cubans already had their Medicaid card. It takes us forever to do things. How can you guys vet these people when the NGOs are in charge of vetting these people? Not even the federal government vets them. How can you guys do this? It just seems impossible for you all to take care of this when you pick them up. The only thing that you guys seem to be doing is sorting them out so that somebody else can process them. That's it. And that's not what we need to do. You are the law at that border, and we need for you to be the law. We need for you to enforce it somehow. I don't know that this administration can help you, but somehow you need to take control of that. You need to do something with the law so that we can take control of that. Because these kids, once we release them at 17, we're going to have to take care of them for the rest of their lives because they all have mental issues. And what are we going to do with the terrorists and the gang members that are already being implanted? More problems for us. So I don't know what you all can do, but we need your help with the law.
There's like 18 questions in that statement, but I will share with you though, and I mentioned this earlier, right? There are a lot of folks coming from other countries, but we run them through multiple databases and checks. We run biometrics on them before they even get here. And so there's no big surprises. I know there's this idea that if we apprehend somebody from any country, right? Yemen or, you know, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, you name it, that, oh my God, there must be thousands of them. There's not thousands of them. Remember, there are systems out there that monitor when they leave their country, when they show up at another country, when they transition to another country. So they are getting checked and monitored. And we can't talk about everything that the federal government does in this setting, but those of us who have worked law enforcement will tell you that I have a top secret security clearance for a reason, right? And so I just want people to be a lot more comfortable with the fact that we are addressing some of the threats that you talk about. We're not turning a blind eye to any of it. And we do recognize that there is a threat out there, and I would agree with that.
Chief Ortiz, first of all, congratulations for your appointment.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, but
Ask me tomorrow.
the other thing is we understand that when presidents change, policies change, okay? The last meeting I attended, when you were here and you were going to Washington, you said you were going to go up there and tell them what needed to be done for the best of America. Do you still, and you had mentioned that you were to the point of being able to retire, so you really didn't care what their opinion was. So
Man, you got a good memory. Don't record that.
So my question is, do you still have the same attitude?
I do, you know, and the chief knows this, and I've got a couple of family members back here and they know this. I had actually submitted my retirement paperwork about a month and a half ago. I was going to leave federal government service on May 31st, and not because of the administration or anything like that. My 83-year-old mother had fallen down during the snowstorm, broke her shoulder, and so I said, I probably need to go take care of her and spend a little bit more time with my grandkids and my family. And, you know, the chief of the Border Patrol asked me if I would stick around. The secretary asked me if I would stick around, and I said, you know, I think we're at a critical point right now. And so because I had that unique situation and perspective, I said, yeah, let's see how this plays out. And so I do. I still firmly believe that I am going to be able to speak frankly, both with the secretary. There's going to be a new commissioner at some point. And then if the president or vice president asks me, no different than when Trump asked me down in Rio Grande Valley 3 years ago what I thought, and I told him what I thought. He listened a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to give him my best operational opinion, right? I'm going to take politics out of it, and I'm going to speak as a Border Patrol agent that's been wearing this uniform for 30 years. So thank you for remembering all that. I'm not going to invite you next time.
Good morning. One short one, but I have two others, please. Why in the world would you take this job?
You know, I don't have an ego, by the way. It's never been about that. It has been about service, you know? I did an interview with PBS one time, and they asked me why I do what I do, and I said, well, my dad sort of expected us to. And so for me now, I owe him, those agents over there, y'all, you've been good to me. I've raised wonderful kids, grandkids, you know, got tremendous family support. I owe you guys. this. That's the only reason.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So we know that all of Border Patrol are, this is what we hear, that are tied up in the processing. And it's been 90 days since they have been stuck in that position. How long does it really take to train other people to do that job? Surely, I mean, we know that Border Patrol takes forever to hire for Border Patrol, but surely for processing, you know, a month, maybe 6 weeks, why haven't we just taken from outside sources, I mean, you can contract with anybody, and speed up those processes?
Yeah, so a couple of things there, and Chief, you can chime in also. It hasn't been as easy as we thought. So we were authorized by Congress, and we've got some folks that represent Congress here that said, hey, we want you to hire 1,200 processing coordinators. Not a huge number, but 1,200, that's going to help. That's 1,200 Border Patrol agents I can put out on the front lines. Guess what? I have probably 150 on the payroll right now because we can't get them through the background quick enough. I may recruit 50 people from Del Rio, 20 may be able to make it to the background portion. And so we're struggling with that, and we're looking at how we make some adjustments there. So yes, but remember, they can only do so much.
Right.
Border Patrol agent still has to be involved in the processing. And so what am I doing to make that better? We're going to what we call an electronic A-file system. We've been doing things by paper since he started and she started. Everything was, you wrote it, or when I started it was a typewriter and then a computer. Guess what? You should be able to do everything on a tablet. They sign it, you move on, it goes to the other agency, and it's that quick. We expect to have this rolled out in about 90 days, and that's going to speed us up and allow Chief Skiro to get more of his agents back out on the front lines. I tell people all the time, my job is if there's a crisis or a situation occurring out there, I'm going to do everything I can to become better at something, right? I'm going to improve my capacity, and this is where we're going to take advantage of that.
Okay, this one, you didn't take it away from me, tell me more. So, you know, we're real proud of the fact that we are catching, 141,000. What difference does it make if you're just going to let them go? Like at the end of the day, I caught this many people. Well, that's like a catch and release. So, I'm talking fishing, but it's the same principle. What difference does it make? How does it help us for you to catch them and release them back into the United States as our burden for the rest of our lives and our children's lives?
So if you don't mind, so I want to take that one because I understand your point completely. I do. But I think what's important to remember is what I said earlier. Your Border Patrol agents have a very distinct mission, and they can only operate within the confines of the law as they exist today, right? And so it's important for us to get out there and catch all of these people, because if we don't, we have no idea who they are, or where they came from, or what their intentions are. So it's important that we catch those 141,000, and we bring them into the office, and then we run biometrics on them, and we make sure we know who we're dealing with. In the event it might be someone from one of these special interest countries, in the event it might be someone who was previously deported because they were a sex offender, or someone who has a warrant for homicide. It's important that we catch these people, regardless of what the outcome is going to be. We have to catch them as often as we can so that we can run these biometric checks and know without a doubt who we're dealing with. Because there are others that we're not catching. And when we don't catch them, we have no idea who has gotten away from us. We have no ability whatsoever to run the checks on the folks that we're not catching. So that's why we're bringing folks down, giving us more help in processing to push more agents out to make sure we catch more of those people. Again, regardless of what the disposition has to be, because Border Patrol agents don't control that. They operate within the confines of the law as it exists. We don't get to decide what the outcome is going to be with that person, but we do get to dedicate every single ounce of our energy into catching as many as we can so that we can find out who they are, why they're here, what their intent may be. Does that help?
And I will add, you know, at the one point, it's probably a little over 1 million people that we have apprehended. They're not all getting released. Now, the family units, the children, it is what it is. You know, they're going to get released. The single adults, we're doing everything we can to send them back south, regardless of where they come from. As you know, in this community, Venezuela, we see a lot of folks from Venezuela here. They're going through a little political strife right now. Very difficult to send people back into a socialist type environment with all this political strife that's happening down there. And so, and the same thing plays out for the Haitians, and the Cubans. And so you see more of those numbers, especially in a community like this. Why? Because they get treated well in Mexico. They're not, you know, they're not raped and pillaged. And so all that facilitates their decision to come through the Del Rio corridor. I will tell you that we can influence this release aspect as you described, and we're trying to do that. We are. We're having those conversations. We're working. We've got agents in Guatemala, in Honduras, in El Salvador, helping them build capacity so they don't leave, right? At the end of the day, the decision's made there. And so we have to do a better job. The State Department has to do a better job. USAID has to do a better job. This is, we talk about this all the time, right? Border security is a team sport. It's not just us. And my chief of operations, he drills this down, and he's pushing agents out all over the world so that way we can address it before they even get to our doorstep.
Yeah, so this is more of a local type question, so probably Chief Skirrow, you can probably answer better. My first is, I've got a couple questions and a follow-up, if that's okay. My first question is, why are the large groups not crossing at the ports of entry? Why are they coming through just crossing the river at different places?
So I think the primary reason is a lot of the folks who would present themselves for inspection at the port of entry would be denied, right? And so they come through illegally, enter the country, and we have then an obligation to deal with them because they are now on our soil.
So the follow-up to that is, as a result, I've lived here 5 years. I've had prior to January 6th, I've had 2 people, illegals, pass through my yard. It's hundreds a day in the backyard, busloads of people. I have 4 daughters. Does it concern me when you say there's a 1,400% increase in sex offenders? Yes, it concerns me. I call Border Patrol when I see, I'm not concerned about the families. Families, they come on the bus, I'm concerned about the single men who are running through my backyard sneaking. And I'm about 50% success rate on whether or not I get an agent to come out to my place when I call. And when they do, it's awesome. They bring helicopters, they bring support. Otherwise, I'm sitting there unarmed, and there's a guy soaking wet in my backyard screaming at me in Spanish. I don't know what to do with this guy. So, you know, to follow up to her question, I'm wondering, okay, so first of all, who do I need to call to get somebody to my house right away? Because there's somebody who's bad. Second question is there a way for a citizen to have the ability to make a citizen get some training? Is there something that I could do so that I'm prepared when I have an encounter?
So couple of parts to that, right? So you call the Border Patrol. If you have undocumented migrants coming through your country or through your ranch, your land, through your backyard, you call the Border Patrol, absolutely. Now, will we be there immediately? A year ago, I would have said, we'll get there immediately. Right now, we're inundated with this processing piece. We just can't. So we're going to come. If you call the Border Patrol, we will be there. I can't promise you how fast I'm going to get there, unless you tell me it's an emergency, this person is endangering my family, this person is assaulted. That takes priority over everything. And I would argue at that point you should be calling 911, and you'll have every law enforcement agency in the land headed your way. But if you've got someone that's coming across your land and they're moving through, and you call us, we're going to come just as soon as we can. Sometimes it'll be immediately. Sometimes it might take us an hour. Because if I've got, I want to share this with you so that you understand kind of what the actual impact is in the Del Rio sector. There are many days when I have 12 Border Patrol agents working 240 miles of border. Because everyone is pulled in, they're all processing or they're transporting, and I've got 12 people to manage all of these calls. And that's from 40 miles into Webb County all the way across to the Terrell County line. And so the chief has committed to getting us more help. That will help us alleviate a lot of your problems. But if you're in fear of your life, you should be dialing 911. And every law enforcement officer will be headed your way. If it's undocumented migrants and they're crossing through your land, call us. We're coming. I just can't guarantee you right now how fast we're going to get there, because everybody's calling, and all of our agents are pulled in right now doing the processing work that is required of us. I hope that answers your question. It's the truth. I hope it answers it satisfactorily.
If I could add real quick, so I'm an idea guy, right? Anytime I hear somebody make a statement like that, I'm thinking, okay, how can we fix that? How can we solve that? And so when Chief Skiro and I were younger agents, we used to have what we call citizens academies. And we'd bring, the citizens in for a couple of weeks, show them what we do, expose them to what's happening out there. And because of COVID, we haven't been able to do that. And so I'm going to challenge Stephanie, who's right here. So she's part of the leadership team here within the sector. We need to probably come up with a Citizen Academy and make it a little bit different, because the challenges that we face now are much different than what we were experiencing 2 or 3, 4 years ago. So let's see if we can come up with something. And it would require commitment from y'all, right? Because you have to show up. But it would certainly, I think, bring some awareness, and then maybe we can put in some operational pointers that may be able to help you. I'm not trying to tell anybody to take the law into their own hand. That's what we're here for. But I do want to make sure that at least you know how to manage a situation like that.
You had one other question, what do I do, right? And so this is my perspective on it, my point of view as a law enforcement officer of over 30 years. We know there are people out there who are convicted sex offenders. We know there are people out there who are gang members who have violated our laws in the past and been deported. There are people out there who have violated crimes or violated laws in their own country that we don't even know about. So my suggestion is, don't engage with these folks if they're in your front yard yelling at you in Spanish. But also remember that all of these folks who have committed crimes, the vast majority of those folks do not want to see you, because they know you're going to call us, and they don't want to see us. So these are the folks who are trying to get away in these smuggling loads or on the trains. We've seen almost 1,000% increase in the number of folks who are trying to get out of here by train. We're catching them up in Uvalde. So you don't need to live in fear. You don't. I mean, we do have people who are damaging our fences. We have people who are breaking into houses. We've had that for a long time. Now, are we seeing more of it? By the sheer volume of people that are coming across, yes, we're seeing more of it. And we will get there. We will respond. But the majority of the people who are trying to get away from us, they don't want to be seen by you, and they certainly don't want to be seen by us, because they're not staying here. They have no intention of staying in our area, in our communities. They're headed off to a city near Nebraska, Seattle, Denver. They're all moving into the interior of the country, which is why we say every community is a border community. This is a large problem that as a country we have to get a handle on. It's not just the border communities down here, it's everywhere. So you don't need to live in fear. You don't. These people aren't trying to stay on your property. They want to be gone, and they want to get away if they're in fact criminals.
So I have a statement and a question. So Chief, you know my story. I'm the founder of Warriors for Ranchers. In one instance, I was shot at my property by a criminal organization. I called Border Patrol agent's cell phone. And when media calls you guys to verify this, it was not documented. And the Border Patrol supervisor stated that if they didn't have AI, a vehicle, or obtain that person, that did not get reported. And I was told I was supposed to call the sheriff's department. To me, that's a huge incident. They also tried to break into my cabins when my wife and daughter was in there. And you know the story. The guy was from the Honduras. I detained him myself. I gave him food. I treated him with respect. And you guys came and picked him up. And they also tried to hijack my truck. So that's my story. I founded Warriors for Ranchers. What I'm not hearing in this meeting is this. There has been a rape on the Rio Grande side last week. It was a 14-year-old girl. There's video of it that was released to the Mexican authorities. We see the cartel bringing them across the border in that area. My question to you guys is this. If he's 10 feet from me, why can't I jump in the water and drag him onto Texas soil and you guys arrest him for crimes of raping women, little girls, little boys? And my other question for you guys is this. There's a gentleman sitting here from South Carolina, very well-known gentleman. These kids are being flown into his state. Why is our government, I don't want to use the word trafficking, but all these little girls are between 12 and 14 years old. We're all seeing them get put on these airplanes, and they're being flown to all these communities. Why are we hiding that from the American people? And I'm getting calls all across the world of these white buses in the middle of the night, driving down dirt roads with little girls, little boys, and they're moving these people. Why can't our government and we as Border Patrol who are detaining these people, and congratulations for your new duty, but this is what's coming your way. We as American people deserve to know the truth. And I'm here to expose it. The cartels are bringing those people across that property, you know it. That was not said in this meeting today. And I'm a little disappointed because they're not only coming through with the cartel are 10 feet from our soil. And from my understanding is, when they're halfway through the Rio Grande River, they're on Texas soil. Why are we not arresting them and punishing them for crimes?
So I'll take a little bit about that, and I don't know your complete story. I wouldn't mess with you, but with respect to, I think I did talk about the cartels and their influence over this traffic. Well, you know what's happening? I'll tell you, in stash houses, these migrants are getting exploited, 10 ways to Sunday. No, you're fine. Trust me, it takes a lot to offend me these days. The only thing I would offer up is don't take the law into your own hands. I mean, if you got to protect yourself, right? That's a whole. But why would you put yourself in that liability as a citizen? Yeah, but even at that, why? You've worked too hard for your ranch, for your property, for your home, for your family. Why would you put yourself in this day and age and
My wife and daughter in the
no, I got you.
I just got back from tax. He's trying to get to my kid.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a whole two different scenarios, right? What I don't want you to do, what I'm telling everybody is, do not take the law into your own hands. That's our job, right?
What are our rights if we were to be forced without a weapon?
If that was me, and I've got a little bitty ranch, I'm going to defend myself, right? I'm going to defend my family. I mean, in this state especially, I'm going to defend myself. I can't put it any simpler than that. But I will tell you, in the scenario you described, jumping into the river, why would you do that, right?
Because it's raping the women and nobody else is doing nothing about it. I served this country in the military.
I got you. But why would you risk yourself in that situation?
For this reason, if I put it down and he gets put in jail, he ain't doing it to nobody else.
I got you. But let law enforcement, right? The chief has.
You guys are there, you're not doing
The chief has tremendous partnerships with the government of Mexico, and he's working merit patrols every day. So I've got to be safe, right? It doesn't make any sense for us to make an arrest in the river. If I try and arrest somebody in the river themselves and they drown, who's that on? That's on me.
off place in the lady right there. I think I heard neighborhood. 3 buses a day coming through the Rudy Ranch. 3 buses a day. As a private property, he doesn't want to come to this property. Your job, sir, is to protect our border. Stop them from coming through a property and do it somewhere else. This is a beautiful neighborhood. That's your job.
My family grew up in that neighborhood. You don't think I know that neighborhood, sir? I know it better than most. But I can tell you that, you know what? We have 240 miles he has to patrol, and they got the high ground on us. You cannot predict where they're going to cross. If we... It's not the case everywhere. I'm going to disagree with you, and we can argue about this all day long, but I'm going to tell you, in my 30-year experience, and I ran the Border Patrol Station in Del Rio and Comstock for 9 years, and I was out there pushing dirt with these gentlemen over here each and every day. I can guarantee you, it isn't like clockwork. It's not. And so, do we have some of these occasions where the cartels are taking advantage of properties? Yeah, all day long. But once again, that's a low-threat environment, okay? Please. Yeah.
As she's talked on multiple occasions, because she knows I will give a voice to the people.
Yeah.
And as you're using Dodge for this, when they come to her property, when the buses leave, the bad guys come out. And if she's calling the sheriff to go, and he's bringing his people out there, arresting them or something, she's going wild. And she's doing her best. She's fought through this country herself for 35 years.
I know.
What can we do to change that to protect her? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, there's obviously some policy things that have to happen at some point, and that's not the chief's job. His job is to lead the men and women out here. My job is to help influence those policies. But it's all y'all's responsibility too, okay? And this is the conversation, this is the town hall meetings, everything that you're doing, this is what this is all about. It's advocacy.
We have time for one last question, and then we got to get to our media portion because we do have a hard stop.
But, hey, before we go to Frank, all right, I want to go to lunch with this gentleman at some point because he and I could probably talk for hours. So see if we can set that up.
That's what we need. We need a leader that's going to go for the people, right? And if you can do that, well, hell yeah, we're glad to have you in that job. Because I want to have one. That's good.
Hey, Chief Ortiz, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Frank.
Love you, sir. I know you
God
guys
bless
are
you.
doing,
Thank you.
You guys are doing a hard job. Our prayers, our thoughts are with you.
Appreciate that.
So it's just a kind of a woven little question. I mean, we know that Title 42 is fixing to go away. It seems like it's going to go away. That's going to open the floodgates because that has allowed you to return this single adults. And so we know that Laughlin is now being used to fly people out as well. And so I understand the frustration. Kelly spoke about, what is this going to do? The amounts of money that are being poured into, it's gonna hit us. Our nation is trillions of dollars in debt. We're pouring huge resources into this, asking other states to send us their taxpayer, their money. And what we're doing is we're expediting this process. We have our failure of a congressman, Tony Gonzalez, and that's my opinion, who is pushing, for 4 asylum centers to speed this up. He's the one that sent the letter to the Department of Defense to use our military air base to fly it out. So what I'm asking, Mr. Ortiz, you spoke about your position, to be able to use your position to influence policies. There's one thing that politicians understand. They understand money, they understand pressure, pain. And so, sir, I need for you to go. I'm not into identity politics, sir. But here in the border, demographically speaking, it is primarily Hispanic. If this was happening in the colonies, in the woodlands, in the poshy areas of our nation, the response, I believe, would be somewhat different because that's where money is. And so I need for you, sir, to tell them there is a group of people in the border regions in Texas who call themselves Tejanos, who are fed up with this. And if they understand pain and pressure, tell them there are millions of Tejanos, of Hispanics, who are watching this, and they see this money that could go to American kids, American schools, for our veterans. It's being used for these invaders. And so, sir, I'll just ask you, Mr. Ortiz, Raul, please, when you're at that table, and set aside Mayorkas. My opinion, what a waste of a man, what a waste of a position, Alejandro Mayorkas. But sir, you need to speak with the pressure and the force and the passion of a patriotic American who represents Texas, who represents the barrios, who represents the underrepresented parts of town. You need to hear us. We want this to stop, and you need to turn this flood at the border. You need to turn it back. And that's all I'm asking, is that you just tell them, come election time, we will remember. We will remember. And that's all I wanted to say. God bless you and your family, sir. We're praying for you and my fellow Border Patrol agents and sisters in green.
Thank you, Frank. I will say a couple of things. The request to use Loeffler was actually my request. Now, don't give Tony Gonzalez all the credit. I asked for them to do that because we wanted to take some pressure off the stations. They were way overcrowded, and we needed to get those folks out of here as quickly as we possibly can. And I think we'll have the first successful flight today.
I hope.
Yeah, we're keeping our fingers crossed. And right? Our job, our facilities aren't geared to hold people for longer than, maybe 12 hours. And we were holding them in there way too long. And so anything we can do to speed that process up, we're going to do. As far as my secretary, I don't agree with you there either. I think anytime you have a transition change, it takes time. Nobody's going to turn a ship in a month or two. So I'm going to do everything I can to, as you described, help influence how it's affecting these communities down here and let them know that it is impactful. Regardless of the color of your skin, I represent everybody as the Border Patrol agent, the highest ranking Border Patrol agent now. And so I don't forget where I come from. I remember what it took to patrol that border out there. And so that's constantly in the back of my mind in the decision-making authority. And then I want to just make a couple of statements. One more gentleman had a question, and then I just want to make a closing statement and allow the chief to make a closing statement.
He just had his hand up the whole time, so.
First off, Chief, congratulations on this historic day. I know that I speak for all of Texas when I say I really wish that the Vice President would have chosen to come here.
Me too.
To celebrate this with you and also hear from these people. And as I mentioned to you earlier, as running for Texas Land Commissioner, being a former commissioner myself, I can tell you that it broke my heart to know that the GLO was not mentioned in groups that were not part of support. And I can tell you that in the future, that will absolutely be part of the support we will provide to this agency and the hardworking people here. But I have an infrastructure background, and I know that people you talked about infrastructure. I've talked about that I am going to absolutely find money to build a wall and not let politicians pay lip service to it like they've done other things. So I'd like to know creatively, they say it's $14 million a mile to build a wall, but what are some of the other infrastructure ideas that you've thought of that would make the facilitating of your job easier and secure the border more?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I just want to touch on the wall. I used to have an argument with one of my fellow chiefs when I was a chief here, because he used to say, we need to build a wall from sea to shining sea, 2,000 miles of wall. I'm like, you're nuts. You've been at Comstock, Texas? You don't need a wall out there. I got some pretty nice cliffs. I'm fine. Big Bend, I don't need a wall out there, right? I'm fine. But there are some urban areas that we do. And some of y'all remember back in 2005, 2006, I was at PAIC here, and I proposed building 4 miles of fencing in Del Rio, got annihilated by some of the community members, and I said, trust me, this is good for the community. And boy, did it change that whole area down there on both sides of the POE. But even the previous 4 years, we were building infrastructure. I didn't agree with some of the things that was proposed. They wanted to paint it black. Why are you wasting money on painting it? Steel is just fine. They had to make it 30 foot. Why not make it 18 foot and get more done? So there are a lot of things that happened that I didn't agree with. I shared, but hey, once again, I'm a bureaucrat. I'm an operator. That's my job, is to share, and then other people process and make decisions on that. With respect to the infrastructure, man, this is 2021. If I bury a cable underneath the ground and I step over that cable and I know that somebody made an entry, and I have enough Border Patrol agents there to respond, and I apprehend them, and I process them in 5 minutes, put them on a bus or a plane, and they're right back to their home country, that's a pretty efficient border. That's what I want to get to. I want to have sensors. We've got satellite imagery that tell us all kinds of information. And we're just on the cusp of being able to tap into some of that. License plate readers. If a bad guy comes from San Antonio or Austin in a stolen vehicle into Kinney County, picks up a load of aliens or dope, and heads back out, I should know that that car doesn't belong here. And then we can all respond. Those are the types of infrastructure and technology projects I'm going to focus on.
And then from a funding issue from Congress, what have they not asked you for? That's what Mauro was talking about earlier. What did Congress not ask you for funding for that they should have?
People. People. Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. Chief, I'm going to, and then I'm going to close.
Oh, please, floor is yours, Chief.
All right, so a couple of good things are happening along the border. I don't want it, I mean, this was all very tremendous conversation. About a couple hours ago, I got notified that the military is going to continue to help us in 22. 3,000 National Guardsmen are going to continue to help fill the gaps in between the Border Patrol agents that are out there. That's great. That's tremendous news. 'Cause to be honest with you, some military folks will say, border security, that's not our bailiwick. We need to be out there worried about something else. But it is a tremendous benefit for us. So that's one. Two, we're getting real close to getting to a point where we can process everybody electronically. That's a huge undertaking for us as an organization. It cost us millions of dollars, but we're almost there. Three, and I saw the town hall at Grace Community Church. I watched it, and there was a call, right, for action by the administration. They need to come down to the border and see it. Well, the Vice President's going to El Paso. I wanted her to come here. I asked that they would come here, but I also recognize that it's probably more important that I bring the Secretary here. So I'm doing everything I can to work to get the Secretary of Homeland Security to Del Rio, to meet with some of y'all, and to meet with our partners, our state and local partners, so he can hear firsthand the impacts that are happening out there. So I'm going to do everything I can to commit to that. And then lastly, we're going to continue to be as transparent as we possibly can as an organization. I owe you that, right? I've got to share information with y'all. If I don't, what are you going to hear, right? You may hear from a news outlet, from a social media outlet, Facebook, or whatever, and you may get half the information. So Chief Skiro and his leadership team will continue to message. Somebody said, well, they put a muzzle on you. I will tell you at the beginning, after January 20th, we probably weren't as free to speak on some of the issues because we're trying to figure out what the message was going to be. Not so much, hey, don't speak. What are we going to say? Doesn't do any good to go out there and say something if it means nothing. And so I'm in a position now where I can say something of value. And that's what I want to commit to. All of you is to continue to fight for the men and women in green, men and women in blue, and the other law enforcement agencies that are out there. But I want to make one commitment to you, okay? This isn't going to be fixed overnight. Frank said it, right? We're able to repatriate people because of Title 42, because of the CDC guidance. It's not going to last forever. I expect traffic to continue to pick up, unfortunately, but we'll do everything we can to get out there and respond to it as quickly as we possibly can. We're not going to be perfect, but we're going to be good. And I talked about my second goal of our strategy, organizational excellence. We're going to try and do everything we can to excel as an agency, to represent each and every one of you. And my commitment to you is to represent Del Rio as best I can. God bless you. Honor first.
our people, so, yeah.
Okay, so I'm a little bit concerned that I want to remain anonymous. Like I said, I'm concerned that, well, I'm moving away from Del Rio in 2 years. Okay, so I want to be able to sell my house when it's time to move. But sure, but there's people who will see me and know, you know. So I don't really want to be